The whispers surrounding Tamar Braxton didn't crash like thunder at first. They began like quiet ripples. But as Tamar kept talking, those ripples grew into waves until no one could ignore them. This wasn't the first time fans had seen Tamar. Stirring chaos. For years, she had cried on cue, stormed off sets, slammed doors, staged breakdowns. But this time her story wasn't sticking. It was collapsing under contradictions. She told the world her teeth had been knocked out, first 3, then 4, until fans exaggerated it to thousands. She claimed her nose was fractured. She spoke like a survivor of a violent assault. But receipts told a different story. Photos surfaced of Tamar Braxton out in public, smiling, laughing, wearing flawless makeup. If her face was shattered, how? Was she partying? If her nose was fractured, where was the swelling? If her teeth were gone, how could she flash a perfect grin? Questions spread faster than her explanations, and sympathy gave way to suspicion. When asked for proof, Tamar gave only contradictions. At first, she said a friend had rescued her. Days later, she said she was alone, abandoned with no help. Both couldn't be true. Then her locations shifted. Atlanta, Miami, the North Side. Each new claim erased the last. It stopped sounding like survival and started sounding like improvisation. Fans accused her of spinning another fake storm to push her music. What hurt more than the contradictions was the silence of her family. Normally, when a celebrity claims to be attacked, their family rushes to defend them. But not this time. Tony. Braxton stayed quiet. Trina Braxton didn't speak. And most shocking, Towanda Braxton, known for balancing loyalty with honesty, refused to comment. For longtime fans, that silence was louder than anything Tamar said. The Braxtons had built their empire on unity. Their motto on Braxton family values was, "When one hurts, we all hurt." But now Tamar claimed she was broken, and her family let her stand alone. The illusion cracked. If her own sisters wouldn't defend her, why should strangers? As weeks passed, blogs mocked her contradictions. YouTubers built timelines exposing the holes. Social media turned her story into jokes. And then, finally, Towanda Braxton spoke. She didn't yell, accuse, or even mention Tamar's name. She said adults must set their own boundaries. She said blood doesn't require stepping into every storm. She said she had her own family and wouldn't carry drama that wasn't hers. She never said Tamar, but the timing made it obvious. Fans instantly connected the dots. She was drawing a line in the sand. This wasn't out of nowhere. Towanda had once gone viral for saying the family created a monster by indulging Tamar's dramatics since childhood. Every album, every tour, every deal came with chaos attached. A breakup, a health scare, a scandal. It had become predictable. For years, her family played along, defending her for the sake of the brand. But this time, they refused. So when Towanda spoke of boundaries, it wasn't advice, it was refusal. A refusal to co-sign chaos. A refusal to sacrifice her peace. A refusal to keep shielding a grown woman from her own consequences. That shook fans who had always seen Towanda as the peacemaker. Now even she had chosen distance over drama. It left Tamar Braxton exposed. Without her family's shield, she looked like just another celebrity spinning wild stories online. Without their backing, her credibility crumbled. Fans said, "If your own sisters don't defend you, why should we?" Sympathy evaporated. The internet exploded with debate. Some said family should always defend family. Others praised Towanda for finally choosing peace. But everyone agreed. The silence of the Braxtons, broken only by Towanda's indirect words, turned this into something bigger than Tamar's claims. It was no longer about broken teeth or a fractured nose. It was about a family fracture, and the way Towanda handled it? Genius. Silence isn't emptiness, it's a weapon. She wielded it masterfully. While Tamar unraveled online, Towanda projected calm. That calmness spoke louder than any fight could. For decades, the Braxtons had been built on unity, but Towanda reminded everyone that adulthood changes the rules. Having your own life means you don't have to carry someone else's baggage. Blood doesn't mean blind loyalty. By stepping back, she stripped Tamar of the shield she had always depended on. It wasn't cruelty, it was accountability. Fans praised her. One tweet read, "Towanda basically said Tamar's mess is her own problem." Another, "If your own blood won't defend you, maybe you're the problem." The deeper truth was that Towanda wasn't only protecting herself emotionally, she was protecting her brand, her future, her children, her peace. Every time Tamar's chaos made headlines, it splashed onto all of them. Producers don't just see Tamar, they see the Braxtons. Towanda's silence told the industry, "I'm not part of this circus." And the timing made it clearer. The Braxtons had been teasing comebacks and rebranding. Tamar's contradictions risked dragging it all down. Towanda's silence wasn't just personal, it was strategy. She was protecting the family's future. That's why this moment hit so hard. It wasn't only about injuries, it was about history. About breaking cycles of chaos. About accountability after decades of indulgence. For fans, this was the turning point. Towanda didn't just break her silence. She broke the illusion that the Braxtons would always defend Tamar. And so, Tamar. Braxton was left spinning alone, her family silent, fans realizing for the first time that blood wasn't enough to protect her anymore. When Towanda Braxton finally let her words slide into the public space, the effect was instant. She did not scream, she did not curse, she did not even say her sister's name, but everyone felt the blow. Every sentence she spoke landed heavy, as if carefully crafted to slice through Tamar's story without ever looking cruel. Silence may be powerful, but silence mixed with calm statements about boundaries becomes something even stronger, a weapon. And that was exactly what Towanda unleashed. While Tamar Braxton was unraveling online, posting and deleting, contradicting herself, in real time with tales of fractured noses and missing teeth, her sister projected stillness. She chose peace. She chose boundaries. She chose to step back while the storm spun around her, and that restraint made Tamar look even more chaotic. Fans were stunned. They had always believed the Braxtons to be unbreakable. When one hurts, we all hurt wasn't just a motto, it was gospel to the viewers of Braxton family values. For years, no matter how wild Tamar got, someone would step up to defend her. This time, the family didn't budge. The silence was deliberate, calculated, almost surgical. Toni Braxton remained dignified and untouched, refusing to tie her legendary career to messy drama. Trina Braxton stayed quiet, knowing one comment would drag her into the chaos. And Towanda Braxton, once the sister who tried to hold everyone together, doubled down. She would not play cleanup crew anymore. Social media lit up with interpretations of Towanda's stance. Some fans quoted her about boundaries and independence, saying she had finally freed herself from years of carrying her sister's storms. Others accused her of cruelty, saying she had abandoned Tamar at her lowest. But even those who defended Tamar had to admit the truth. Silence from your own family speaks louder than strangers ever could. If your sisters don't believe you, why should the world? That question echoed louder with each passing day. Leaving, Tamar fighting shadows. Meanwhile, Tamar Braxton scrambled to reclaim her narrative. She went live on Instagram with polished makeup, switching between crying and snapping at viewers. She repeated her claims, hinted at betrayal, suggested conspiracies, and leaned into the language of victimhood. But her words landed flat. Without her sisters standing beside her, her audience no longer heard cries for help. They heard theatrics. Clips of her contradictions were shared side by side, exposing the holes in her timeline. Fans laughed about her changing story. Teeth gone, teeth back, nose fractured, nose flawless. What used to make people rush to her defense now made them roll their eyes. Behind the scenes, insiders whispered that this wasn't just about one messy story. This had been building for years. Producers who had worked with the Braxtons quietly admitted Tamar's behavior often caused chaos on set. Walk-offs, dramatic exits, public breakdowns, it was all part of a cycle. Once it may have been entertaining, but after years of repetition, even her own family was tired. Towanda's silence wasn't just emotional, it was business. She was protecting her own future and the future of the Braxton name. Hollywood doesn't separate one Braxton from another. Networks see them as a package. When Tamar trends for chaos, producers assume the whole family is difficult. By drawing boundaries publicly, Towanda Braxton was sending a message to networks, brands, and executives. Do not tie me to her storms. I'm not part of this circus. It was a survival move, not just for her, but for her children, her career, her legacy. The internet debate raged on. Some said blood should always stand by blood. They brought up Tamar's past struggles with depression, her battles with abusive relationships, her moments of public vulnerability. They argued that silence at this time was cruel, but others clapped back, saying enabling someone is not the same as supporting them. They pointed out that allowing Tamar to spin wild contradictions only kept her trapped in her own cycle. And they praised Towanda for refusing to drown in someone else's storm. That's real courage, one fan wrote. Another posted, sometimes love means stepping back. Silence can be the most honest answer. For Tamar, the lack of defense from her family was devastating. Her identity had always been tied to family. Even when she fought with her sisters, the unity eventually returned. But this time, there was no softening, no smile for the cameras, no last-minute show of solidarity. The family shield was gone, and without it, she was naked before the public. Her contradictions were dissected mercilessly, and every attempt she made to spin the story only backfired. As the days passed, the narrative shifted completely. It was no longer about whether Tamar had been attacked. It was about why her family refused to defend her. It was about what silence really meant. And in that silence, audiences saw something Tamar could not hide: accountability. For the first time, her sisters were refusing to cover for her. For the first time, they were choosing their peace over her performance. The heartbreak for fans was undeniable. This was a family that had once seemed unshakable. They had weathered fame, fortune, heartbreak, and betrayal together. They had promised unity no matter what. Now that promise looked broken. Towanda wasn't being cruel. She was protecting herself. She was protecting her children. She was protecting her future. But to outsiders, the silence looked like abandonment. To some, it even looked like betrayal. But that fracture became the story. Blogs stopped focusing on Tamar's claims of teeth and noses and started publishing think pieces about family dynamics, accountability, and cycles of enabling. Twitter threads dissected the history of Tamar's scandals. YouTube commentators replayed Towanda's words and declared this the end of the illusion. This isn't about injuries, one viral video said. It's about a family finally refusing to carry one person's chaos. And that was the truth. The Braxtons were more than sisters. They were a brand. When one spiraled, they all paid the price. For years, they had carried Tamar's storms, sacrificing their own peace for her spotlight. But by stepping away, Towanda and the others drew a permanent line. It was their way of saying, "We will no longer drown with you," Tamar Braxton continued to post, desperate to hold the narrative. She hinted at betrayal, suggested conspiracies, and accused people of not understanding her pain. But without her sisters, her words felt empty. The sympathy she craved slipped further away. Each contradiction became another nail in her credibility. Each day of silence from her family became proof that even those closest to her didn't believe her anymore. The irony is that Tamar had always thrived on attention, whether positive or negative. She knew how to spin chaos into relevance, but this time the chaos spun out of her control. The more she tried to own the narrative, the more she lost it. And the silence of her sisters ensured she remained cornered. Because no matter how many times she posted, the audience kept asking the same question. If your own family won't defend you, why should we? That question cut deeper than anything else. Fans who once cried for her now rolled their eyes. Viewers who once defended her now posted memes mocking her contradictions. And while Tamar fought to be seen as the victim, the silence of her family reframed the entire scandal. The story was no longer hers. It belonged to the people who refused to speak. For Towanda Braxton, this wasn't cruelty. It was liberation. She had carried her sister's storms for years. She had watched her family defend chaos disguised as pain. She had warned years earlier that indulging Tamar had created a monster. Now, by staying silent, she was proving she meant every word. This was her way of reclaiming her peace, her life, her brand. And in that act, She showed the world that silence can be stronger than any speech. The debate raged on, but one truth was undeniable. The image of the Braxtons as unbreakable was shattered. The illusion of unity was gone. And for Tamar, the loss of that illusion was more devastating than any headline could ever be. The storm around Tamar Braxton didn't die down. It grew heavier with each passing day. Every caption she wrote, every live video she streamed, every attempt she made to pull sympathy only dragged her further into disbelief. She claimed to be hurt, but flawless selfies kept surfacing. She claimed she was abandoned, but old clips showed her surrounded by people. She insisted her teeth were gone, but her smile betrayed no gaps. The contradictions stacked up like bricks until her story no longer felt tragic. It felt like performance art. And while she kept spinning, the silence of her family drowned her out. That silence was not accidental. It was calculated. Toni Braxton, the matriarch of their fame, kept her dignity intact, knowing her reputation was too valuable to tide a mess. Trina Braxton, fiery when provoked, refused to give even one comment that could drag her deeper into Tamar's narrative. And Towanda Braxton, who had already drawn her boundaries, stood firm. She had made her decision and she was not going back. The icy quiet was louder than any denial, and it told the world everything they needed to know. Fans dissected every moment. They replayed old interviews where Towanda warned the family had created a monster by indulging Tamar's theatrics. They compared her recent statements about boundaries and independence. They recognized this wasn't shade. It was a permanent break. Tamar no longer had her family's shield. For years, whenever scandal erupted, she could count on her sisters to soften the blow. Even when they disagreed privately, they would stand publicly in defense. This time, nothing. The silence was cold, final, deliberate. And that was what made people talk. The debate shifted completely. It wasn't about broken teeth or fractured noses anymore. It was about why Tamar's family refused to defend her. It was about what silence really meant. Some fans called it abandonment, cruel to leave a sister alone at her lowest. Others saw it as liberation, a family finally refusing to enable chaos that had gone unchecked for decades. One tweet read, "Towanda basically said, 'We love you, but we won't drown with you.' That's real strength." Another said, "If your own sisters don't defend you, maybe you're the problem." Behind the scenes, whispers grew louder. Industry insiders admitted Tamar's behavior had long been difficult to manage. Producers spoke of delays, tantrums, walk-offs, chaos at rehearsals that always seemed to flare up when a new project needed headlines. For years, the family absorbed it all, protecting the brand. Now the family had drawn their line, and executives noticed. Towanda's silence wasn't just emotional, it was a signal to Hollywood. We are not tied to her storms. Do business with us, not her circus. Meanwhile, Tamar tried harder. She hinted at betrayal. She suggested conspiracies. She went live with tears, then laughter, then anger. She accused people of twisting her words. She begged for sympathy, demanded attention. But without her family's backing, her words felt hollow. Each contradiction became a punchline. Each silence from her sisters became evidence. Fans no longer saw a victim. They saw a cycle. They saw theatrics. They saw a woman spiraling without the safety net she had always relied on. For fans, the heartbreak was real. This was still a family. Sisters who had once promised unity above all else. The Braxtons had built their empire on the illusion of togetherness. "When one hurts, we all hurt," was the line fans believed. Now that illusion was broken. Towanda wasn't being cruel. She was protecting herself, her children, her peace. But to the outside world, it looked like abandonment. It looked like betrayal. The split in opinion mirrored the fracture in the family itself. Some argued blood must always defend blood. They pointed to Tamar's past struggles, her near-death scares, her public battles with mental health. They said silence in such a moment was heartless. But others pushed back, saying loyalty has limits. They argued that enabling Tamar only fueled more destruction. They praised Towanda for choosing peace over performance, survival over sacrifice, and, as the debate raged, the truth became impossible to ignore. The illusion of the Braxtons as unbreakable had shattered. The image of eternal unity was gone. And for Tamar, that loss was devastating. Her brand had always been tied to family. Even when she fought with them, she knew unity would return. Now, stripped of that defense, she stood alone in her contradictions, her theatrics, her chaos. The family name no longer protected her. Without that shield, her credibility collapsed. Fans began piecing together the larger pattern. They noticed how every major career moment in Tamar's life had been surrounded by chaos. Album rollouts paired with sudden breakdowns, tours shadowed by walk-offs, TV deals lined with scandals. It wasn't coincidence, it was formula. Chaos had become part of her brand, and now that her family refused to play along, the brand itself was exposed and collapsing. The most painful truth was that this was still a family at its core. A family that had once stood side by side through fame, fortune, betrayal, heartbreak. A family that had built an empire on love and loyalty. But now, the silence showed the world that even love can fracture when chaos becomes the only currency. The sisters had made their choice. They chose distance. They chose peace. They chose their own futures. For Tamar, this was the cruelest cut of all. No matter how many times she posted, no matter how many explanations she gave, the only sound people heard was the silence of her family. And that silence was deafening. It reframed everything. It made fans ask the question Tamar could not answer. If your own sisters don't stand with you, why should anyone else? The irony is that Tamar thrived on attention. Positive or negative, she knew how to turn chaos into relevance. But this time, chaos turned on her. It spun out of her control. The more she tried to dominate the narrative, the more she lost it. The more she fought, the more hollow she looked. And the silence of her sisters made sure she stayed cornered, unable to climb out of the storm. Some fans grieved the fracture, like a death. They had grown up watching the Braxtons, believing in their unity, admiring their bond. To them, the silence felt like the end of an era. Others saw it as necessary evolution. They argued that survival sometimes means letting go, that sometimes love isn't enough, that sometimes loyalty becomes self-destruction. They saw Tawanda's silence as the ultimate act of courage, the moment she chose her own life over drowning in her sister's chaos. And maybe that's the lesson. Not about broken teeth or fractured noses, but about broken bonds. For the first time, the Braxton sisters were not united. For the first time, they showed the world that blood has limits. For the first time, they proved that silence can speak, louder than any defense. By the time Tawanda's words about boundaries echoed across social media, the scandal was no longer Tamar's. It belonged to the silence. It belonged to the sisters who refused to play along. It belonged to the fans who finally saw the illusion collapse. Tamar was left spinning alone, desperate for relevance, desperate for defense, desperate for the unity that would not return. And the silence told her, told the world, told the industry, it's over. Because sometimes the loudest statement isn't a fight. Sometimes the loudest statement isn't even a word. Sometimes the loudest statement is silence. And in this case, silence ended the illusion of unity forever.